Cincinnati at 7. So, okay.
All right, we're up and running.
We're live on YouTube. Give me a link.
Yeah, headed your way.
Via
Trying
what?
to anyway. Northwestern at 7. Oh, Cincy at 7.
Cincy at 7. So all day today, I've been thinking most likely the top 6 is going to mirror exactly the AP poll. That's going to be Bama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Clemson, A&M, and Florida. That's still my guess. I was curious about whether or not they might put Cincy or BYU or something higher, and they haven't. So still looking good for A&M. If you're thinking that these matter that much, they kind of do.
Hey, it gives us something to talk about.
Certainly.
There sure as heck hasn't been any football. There you go. All right, so the talking heads are going to break down what we've seen so far up to number 7. Any big surprises for you in looking at that so far?
BYU lower than I thought they would be. I mean, I think it's fair, but I just thought that being undefeated, they would give them more credit for that. But I think this is a good sign that they are punishing them for their strength of schedule more than I anticipated. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Cincy being up there, that offsets that a little bit, sitting at number 7.
Number 6, Florida.
Number 6, Florida. Okay, sorry, Herbie.
So cooler heads have prevailed, and we will be ranked higher than Florida. The head-to-head matchup matters. Here we go. Officially, we're number 5. And again, that doesn't surprise me. Some people thought maybe we'd squeak in ahead of Clemson, but it makes sense to me.
Sitting right there where we ought to be.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. I can handle that. I don't want to be in the top 4 to start out the college football rankings. That's bad voodoo.
Nah, it's fine.
No.
But
I don't like this. I like sitting right here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, gosh, if you want to talk voodoo, maybe you rather we're 7 or something and light a fire under the players. But I don't really get into that. I think this is fine, and we haven't really had a chance to talk about it. But I think this just confirms that it's really all out there in front of A&M. People can complain about Florida being ranked higher than us in some rankings here and there or whatever, but in reality, just win. It's all out in front of you, and it really only matters what we do from here on out. So,
no, I think this is best case scenario for A&M, especially after sitting at home for a couple of weeks. We'll talk
Alabama
a little bit more
1,
about
Notre
that.
Dame 2.
Alabama 1, Notre Dame number 2. Give me a break.
Clemson at number 3 surprises me. One loss Clemson ahead of undefeated Ohio State, when Ohio State just beat a team that I believe was 8th in these rankings. I think Indiana was 8th.
Right.
Sure.
So the committee's got to be looking at number of games then, right?
Uh-huh.
It just pure Ohio State hasn't done enough to warrant jumping Clemson. Clemson's got a very, very close loss to the number 2 team on the road without their best player. There's just got to be some recognition of that. I mean, overall, looks pretty fair to me.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I don't see anything too crazy or controversial here, which, let the games begin. Let's play some games.
Yeah. That was one concern I had going into this, was that out of sight, out of mind, and A&M has lost 2 weeks of schedule, and that sucks. But it hasn't seemed to hurt us. So I think we've got enough games on tape that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've played 6 games. We've been sitting for 3 weeks, and to be just outside of the playoff ought to be plenty of motivation for the team from here on
Hmm.
out, right? So get your act together, go play some football, and play your way in.
Yeah.
Gets their attention. So, but it also recognizes, I think the team, it's the right message that hey, they're sitting there above Florida as well. I think that means something, and
I
that means something to the players.
I do too. And point of fact, Indiana's at 12. I don't know what I was looking at earlier, but anyway, I think you brought up message, and I think this is good. I think Jimbo is going to tell these guys right now, hey, it's all right there in front of you. So you don't let LSU take it from you. Don't let Auburn take it from you.
Yeah.
Like, you want to prove that this is right, then let's go. It's time to go. And
It's
I don't know. What do
no,
you
I
look?
think the mindset is it's what we want as fans. It's kind of what we want. We want a hungry football team to go out there and improve on what they've done, and they're healthy, they're ready to roll, and something you and I have chatted about a little bit. May not be a whole lot of football games left for A&M. The way this is
Yeah,
going to play itself out, and so that really sets them up this weekend. LSU, obviously LSU is down, but that is a huge, huge game for us. We've got to come out and we've got to thump them, and we've got to be the physical football team that we've been, and we need to show the committee that you know the couple weeks off didn't hurt us. We're getting better, and then you just let everything else play out. Because I'm not so sure that we're going to get to play Tennessee, Auburn, and Ole Miss. I think at least one of those games is going to fall off, if not two. And this weekend against LSU, who still has a brand that's
yeah.
important.
Why do you think that we might lose some of those games? I just.
Yeah, I just think the whole contact tracing, the impact we've seen on our team and on teams across the conference has taken its toll. And the thing is it comes down to scheduling. If one team loses another game and they lose, the way the schedule fits together to finish the season is very precise. And Billy spent a lot of time talking about this on the boards and in some updates, and there might actually be a conflict with that last week against Ole Miss that may play itself out, and we may have an open date on 12/19 and not have a game. Which presents an interesting scenario in my mind, except for the fact that BYU is so far down the list it may not matter. They may not be
I think it
looking
would
for an
still
additional
matter.
opponent. Yeah,
Yeah.
it could.
So
It
to
could.
to reset, I mean, it's been discussed that maybe us scheduling BYU might be mutually beneficial down the road. Although, unless you're saying BYU is too far back to want to schedule us, like if they were 6 or 7, would they be thinking, let's get a P5 team on the schedule,
Right.
anybody to prove ourselves, because that'll vault us into the top 4? And now you think that it doesn't really matter what they do.
Well, you're right, exactly. So they're sitting way down there. Where are they? 16th?
No, they were in the. Well, I'm going to get it wrong again. I thought they were like ninth.
They're No, they're not that high. BYU is pretty far down on the
Were they
list,
something
and
like
so they
11?
would a lot would have to happen. And look, they'll keep winning, right? A lot has to happen for them to move on up. But that would present a very interesting issue for them if we get down to that December 12th and they're on the outside looking in and we're on the outside looking in, but just barely. And they've climbed to 6th or 7th, for instance, right behind us. And the committee might actually start dictating to teams in their commentary and saying, hey, if you're on the outside looking in and you got an open slot, maybe you should look around for a game to play. I could absolutely see that happening. And then BYU, there they are. BYU's at 14, right behind Iowa State, which is interesting. 6-2 Iowa State at 13.
God, boy, even I think BYU would get Iowa State. I
Yeah.
really do. I think that quarterback of theirs presents a lot of problems kicking ball.
But think about what BYU would be faced with at that point to say, well, do we go play somebody like an A&M, or let's say, it wouldn't be Florida because Florida's got the inside track to the title game. but somebody else out there? Or would they just sit back and go, nope, we're just going to settle for a New Year's Six bowl, and we're undefeated, and we'll go win that, and then we'll just be like TCU back when they won the Rose Bowl, and we'll live off of that for a decade. Right? Like, or do you risk it all and go play somebody that you might have a tough time standing up against, and then you kind of lose out on everything, and you don't go to anything worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, if it's me at BYU, I don't think they need a win like that to live for the next decade. I mean, they're doing what they've always done. They go in cycles. They're pretty good.
Well, and they have a national brand. BYU does, right? Mm-hmm. Even when they're not great, they're independent. They every once in a while they play some marquee opponents like they would have this year if the schedule hadn't crushed them. But I don't think they need that like some other programs might. So maybe they'd be more willing to risk it and go out and, man, I'd love to see the Cincinnati. Let's let BYU and Cincinnati play. Yeah. It'd be awesome. But, COVID's going to present some really weird, wacky things down the stretch. So there's a heck of a lot to play out. I'll tell you one thing I don't like. I don't like seeing Oklahoma at 11 and Iowa State at 13. So that one sticks out like a sore thumb to me.
Especially when it's likely Texas. Well, if Texas can get through Iowa State, playing Oklahoma, and then you're talking about Oklahoma getting another shot at that point a top 15 Texas in these rankings, because they're already, I think, outrageously high at like 17 or something.
They are at 17. Yeah.
So.
And some of this, look, I mean, from 15 to 25, somebody's got to be in there.
It's got to be somebody.
It's got to be somebody. Might as well be Texas. Why not? Big game for them on Friday against Iowa State.
Against Iowa State. Is that in Austin?
I believe it is in Austin. Boy, they absolutely thumped. It is Friday, 11 a.m. in Austin. I bet you there'll be about 10 people in the stands. Fantastic. Maybe the Longhorn faithful can get a good look at their future head coach.
Boy, what a letdown that would be. Oh gosh,
it would be to them, but it would be the smart hire. Just like they should have hired an Art Briles or a Gary Patterson. And didn't.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm done. I'm done claiming so-and-so is a smart hire, outside of being able to do something like we did with Jimbo.
That's fair.
You had Scott Frost. Everyone thought that was a smart hire. Even I thought that was a smart hire.
Has not worked out. Jim Harbaugh at Michigan seemed like a slam dunk.
Sure. Yeah. Even Tom Herman was being courted by LSU the year before he left for Texas. And Texas, So, I think there are some hires where you can be like, that's a dud hire. Should have known Willie Taggart was a dud hire at Florida State, But for the most part, a lot of these, the hot up and coming coach from a school like Iowa State, I don't know how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, we don't. Well, let's talk real quick though about what we saw at the top. So we've got 4 teams ahead of A&M in Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State. Are all of those teams playing better football than A&M was before COVID hit? How do you feel about that? And let's start with Alabama, since they're number 1.
Yes, I think so. That's about the only one where I would definitively say yes.
Because that offense appears to be so unstoppable.
Yeah. And the stable of receivers is crazy elite, stupid.
Unbelievable.
And Mac Jones is, doing everything right to get them the ball. So I think do they have defensive problems by Alabama standards?
By Alabama standards, yes.
I still think they're the clear and away favorite, and yeah, I would not take us in a rematch of that game. Now I don't think it's going to be 28 points like it was last time,
Right.
but
Yeah, because there's a difference between thinking you can do something and believing you can do something. And I think A&M's gotten to the point where they believe it. And,
mhm,
in that game, especially early, you saw a team that was physically capable of standing up to Alabama,
mhm,
of running the football against Alabama, moving the football. But there wasn't a belief. There was still just too much of an edge and too many mistakes that I don't think you would see the next time around. But I think Alabama's a lot better too on offense, even than they were against us. They're starting to run the football,
yeah,
and some of that is they throw to run. They used to run it to throw it, and now it's
yeah,
backwards. And but they're getting darn good at both, and they're able to run downhill on teams, especially once they soften them up a little bit and back them off. They're just dangerous. I don't see anybody hanging with them right now. That doesn't mean they can't. That doesn't mean if history has proven anything, um, that team down there in the 3 spot can get up for it
yep,
by the time the playoff rolls around. But let's talk about
absolutely.
Notre Dame since they're in number 2.
I don't know what to think about Notre Dame because I thought that Clemson was going to get them even with their backup quarterback,
Well, they dang near
and
did and
they
should
dang
have.
near did, should
Yeah,
have, but you know, Clemson is they are still physically a very imposing team, and that's where kind of these prior duds from Notre Dame when they did get into the championship game or the playoff or a big bowl. That's where it was kind of obvious they're not ready physically for an Alabama or a Clemson or something, and they stood up a lot better than I thought they would this year. So I don't know. Um, Book, veteran quarterback now at this point.
right.
That certainly matters. So
I
I don't know what
noticed,
to think about him, but the resume justifies it as much as I hate to say it.
you know, it's strangely enough, I watched Notre Dame and I watched them play a few times, and I've watched them play some terrible opponents, and I've watched them play Clemson. And the team they most remind me of is the 2018 A&M team under Jimbo, but with a more experienced and better quarterback.
Mm,
And it's a team that kind of they look like we did. They looked like a team that was growing into itself physically, but wasn't there yet.
mhm.
Had some speed, could play up on defense sometimes, could make plays on offense. But you think back to that year, Clemson. We hung with them. We were right there at the end with Clemson at home. We had that game circled, just like Notre Dame had this game circled, and we're able to pull something off that I don't think they can repeat. And you think back to that 2018 team, I wouldn't have wanted to play Clemson at the end of the year. Not
No,
at all.
no.
They would have absolutely steamrolled us. And we caught them early. And, I think Notre Dame caught them at the right time, obviously missing Trevor Lawrence and I think they had a couple of guys on defense that just were out for injury. And I would look forward to that rematch, which brings up an interesting point because everybody's talked about it
Yep.
all week. What happens if Notre Dame and Clemson split? It would have to be an overwhelming Clemson thumping of Notre Dame. They'd have to win by 3 touchdowns or more.
To knock them out of the top four, you think?
Yes,
That's an interesting point. I don't know. There's a certain Texas poster that really knows his X's and O's that is vehement that that's not the case. That a loss that late in the season would eliminate Notre Dame. I hope he's correct. Uh, I think there is some history there with the committee treating these championship games as de facto play-in games,
right.
and that late loss eliminating the loser of those games. And which is kind of what I've said for weeks now. The way it looks to me, and the rankings here confirm it, is if A&M can win out, which is still a big if, but if they can do it, the chips are going to fall to get them in the playoff. I
Right.
think that will happen.
I think you're right.
Um, so, but to be doubly certain, it would be nice if Notre Dame won that rematch.
I suppose it would. I suppose it would. So the last team, Ohio State. Well, what do we think of Ohio State?
You know, I think that's another team that's with only 4 games under their belt hasn't quite hit their stride. It's why you saw them, give up a big lead to Indiana, but I think is very strong. I think Justin Fields is, he's what everyone thought he was going to be coming out of high
Right.
school, or he certainly will be by the end of the season. So, um, you know, I don't know how it's going to play out for them. Boy, it sounds like Northwestern has a clear path to the Big Ten championship game now, because I don't know if you saw that Wisconsin is out this week. They're not going to get to play their game, and that means they won't play the minimum number of games required by the Big Ten's new laws.
And Notre Dame's, or excuse me, Northwestern's sitting there at 8. Right, so they're 5-0. They're sitting there at 8. I don't think they're in the same league as an Ohio State, but they have a path. If they want to win out and get themselves in. Ohio State is interesting to me because I actually think if A&M had played the last 2 games, if the Aggies were sitting there at 7-1 instead of 5-1, I think they actually would have been 4th tonight, ahead of a 4-0 Ohio State. I think that's just too big of a gap in the number of games. And so I just think that's something that's interesting to kind of keep an eye on. I do. Yeah. I think 2 more wins, they would have been ahead of them.
Well, yeah, and potentially games are where we would have rolled.
Ideally.
Ideally.
Right? Yeah. Tennessee.
God, I can't remember. Yeah, Tennessee and Ole Miss. Yeah, maybe so. But again, even if that were the case at this point in the season, the one thing I do like about the committee is that they have shown that they will shuffle the deck based on resume week to week. And so if in 3 games A&M is then, still hasn't beaten anyone impressive, but Ohio State's got a couple more games under their belt, then they would have potentially shuffled an undefeated Ohio State ahead of us. But
they've got some Notre Dame highlights up here. Some of their games against Georgia Tech, against Clemson. Man, again, I'm just looking at those linemen. I'm looking at the size, and they are not SEC level size up front, but they are quick and they fight, right? So, it's that scrappy team, as I was talking about earlier, the one that just reminds me of what we had in 2018. So, which, our defense looks very different these days, but just interesting. I'm watching these guys chat away and fill some airtime just like we are. So, Well, that's it for the college football playoff. The first rankings being out. Things kind of fell the way we thought they would. No huge surprises, but we got a big one coming up this weekend. And what are your early thoughts on LSU and what they actually bring to Kyle Field this year? And you expect us to be ready?
I expect us to be ready. That team does not look very good. They just don't. They don't.
Agreed.
Yeah, but look, despite the opt-outs and losing all the guys from the last year's national championship team, that team's going to come with a lot of talent. And so that always scares you. You talked about, physically, that team is going to stand up to anybody in the country still. But can they play good? I don't know. They've got quarterback problems. Their identity, they seem to be missing a little bit of an identity, right? Because they can't play like they played last year because they don't have that guy or any experience pulling the trigger. And so they're searching every week for what the formula is with this group of guys that we can put on the field, and they still haven't found it.
Yeah, and even and Arkansas did what Arkansas does. They stuck to their script last week on defense, and they didn't really do the things that I think we're capable of doing
Mm-hmm.
against LSU and against a rookie quarterback. I mean, that kid had a lot of time to sit back in the pocket and think twice, think three times about where he wanted to throw the football, and eventually somebody got open. You especially saw that late.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be a luxury this Saturday night against A&M.
No, they're not going to wear us down.
They're not
on
going to wear
either.
us down.
No.
They're not going to be able to block 4 all the time, and when we do decide to bring 5, I think we're going to be able to generate pressure and make the kid make some mistakes. And then on the other side of the football, that's not a good defense. That's a defense that can be scored on. And, if our guys have maintained their rhythm and have practiced well and are ready to roll, and by all accounts, it sounds like they are, I think they'll be able to score and score a lot. So, hopefully the A&M team that we saw against South Carolina and against Arkansas kind of picks up where it left off. I did think it was interesting, Jimbo, talking about how, once it became apparent they weren't going to play the Ole Miss game, and I think they realized that a week before everybody else, they turned their attention to LSU, and they've been getting ready for LSU. And, that's a lot of time. And I loved hearing ones-on-ones all last week, hitting each other.
Don't have
really,
a choice.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's as good a sign as anything. Our football team has been practicing against a better football team than they're going to play on Saturday.
So we'll see.
So we will see.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned, the South Carolina game. We haven't really talked about it since, well, we did the post-game wrap or whatever. But the one thing that I love about seeing us ranked ahead of Florida here is that I'm sick and tired of hearing about how much Florida has improved since our game back in October. So hopefully, I don't know, I'm sure they're entitled, delusional, nutcase fans are all bleeding all over Twitter right now, talking about how they should win that rematch by 28 points. I can't believe how common that view is among their fans. I mean, I'm not seeing any Aggies who aren't saying, yeah, that'd be a tough game if we played them again. They've gotten better. We've gotten better. We won the first go around. I have seen some Aggies saying, hey, you want to talk about mistakes being made? Look at the mistakes and the score sheet, and on balance, if anything, Florida was lucky to keep that game as close as it was, and those people are way more right than these idiots from Florida who think they're going to win by 4 touchdowns against this A&M team. The way they've played in the weeks after that is not something we've seen in a long time from an A&M team.
Absolutely.
So I do worry that, we've got to maintain that momentum, and not playing for 2 weeks really sucks on that front.
It does. I heard, I'm not sure who it was on Texas radio today. It was either Cole Kubelik or John Harris, just talking about that the approach has to be like a bowl game, right? Mm-hmm. You got that much time off. You need to prep like a bowl game, get your team's mindset right, just like you were going into a bowl game, and then go out and execute. And, for the most part, under Jimbo Fisher, that's been a good mindset to have. Going back to that, just the Florida A&M comparison, because of course, before the rankings came out, Herb Street was on there kind of saying the same thing he's been saying. Yes, A&M had the head-to-head, but it's about what Florida has done since, without ever mentioning exactly what you said, which is what has A&M done since? They've just been absolutely dominant. Yep. And seem to have eliminated some of the mistakes and the issues that they even had in that Florida game by getting some guys back, reinforcing the backside of the defense, which is going to be huge down the stretch. Having those guys healthy, those young guys back there in the secondary who absolutely flash and make plays is going to be huge. And, I just can't get over the fact that A&M physically dominated in the trenches against Florida. And I just can't believe that the people defending Florida don't recognize that. And even this weekend against Vanderbilt, at least for 3 quarters, if not 3.5 quarters, you saw Vanderbilt stand up to Florida in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the end, they won out because they have better skill talent.
Sure.
And they were able to make some plays, but they weren't getting pushed around by Florida. Florida doesn't push anybody around.
No. To be fair, which defensive line has made our offensive line look the worst this year?
It was Vanderbilt in game
one. That was
one.
game 1, but it was Vanderbilt. Interestingly enough, so I was watching that game.
They have the only sack
is Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Yeah. But no, you're right. Yes, defensively, Florida has looked better at times. I think even that is sometimes a stretch. A lot of that is credit given over what happened in the Georgia game, which after their starting quarterback went out, whatever. Yeah, but I do still think that they've looked better. However, I don't think anything changes in the trenches if we play Florida again on either side of the ball.
I think you're right.
So they might play better in the second level, but no, they're not going to push us around. If anything, our offensive line is gelled even more. Behind the running attack, I think they love to get out there and just push some dudes over. And that really seems to help settle the whole offense down when we really lean on that. So, yeah.
Well, it's fun to talk about, barring some really crazy things happening this season. A&M and Florida will not play again.
No.
So it's been settled. It was settled on the field already.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, though, because, I've said, okay, I think the chips are going to fall for A&M to be in the playoff if they can win the rest of their games. The one thing I think that's going to throw a wrench in that is if Florida can beat Alabama.
Absolutely. 1,000%.
Alabama's the one team that the playoff committee will let in if they lose the championship game. And
if they sit there in the number 1 spot, for sure. We've seen it happen before.
If it's a hard-fought game, they're sitting number 1, lose close to number 6.
Matt Jones, dislocates his shoulder at halftime, something like that.
And Cooper Tagovailoa comes in and looks good, but it's not quite enough to complete the comeback.
Cooper Tagovailoa. I don't think he's there anymore. I think he's somewhere else. I think that was a miss.
No.
Oh.
That was a total hit.
Okay.
It was a total hit. No, the real Tagovailoa brother is at Maryland now. Cooper Tagovailoa is the fictitious third brother that really come on.
I'm out on my my memes. Okay, is this a mashup of a Manning and a anyway, I'm sorry. Stop. I'm stopping. Stop all of this.
Anyway. One of our 2 watchers has got their lighter in the air right now saying, yes, more Cooper Manning jokes. Anyway. So what do you think about that as far as the possibility of Florida beating Alabama? Florida's going to score on Alabama. They're going to score. We move the ball on Alabama, like you said. Not really the belief to overcome the early mistakes to keep that game close, but we did move the ball early pretty well.
Here's what I think. I think Alabama is going to score 80 points on Florida. And here's why. Because Florida is the one team that A&M's managed to be able to get behind on defense, right? They hit them for big plays.
With Caleb Chapman,
right? Who, pour one out for Caleb Chapman.
Bless him.
Yes, God. Yes. Rest in peace, Caleb. And you mentioned the Georgia game. Georgia got behind Florida's defense the entire day. The entire day. Wide open behind their secondary. And after that second drive where the investment banker hit that kid for a touchdown and then hurt his shoulder, after that, they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn deep. I mean, dudes were waiting on footballs, and they were that far behind the Florida defense. And so what does Alabama do really well? They throw the ball deep.
They do.
They stretch the field, and they are going to have a field day against Florida. Absolutely.
And they run the ball, which obviously, when you saw us win 8 of 9 running the football to cram it down their throats in the third quarter, score a touchdown.
Yes.
Alabama's going to run the ball, and then what choice is Florida going to have?
Right.
They're going to get beat deep.
Yeah, and look, and we talk about Alabama and the strength of their defense, and they're on shaky ground a little bit this year. Alabama doesn't typically fall for the eye candy that we've talked about a few times that A&M struggled with earlier. They are still a fundamentally sound defense. It's been more about just making plays and some of that talent growing up. So I don't see that as a very good matchup for Florida on any side of the ball.
Well, good.
I'm
glad to hear it.
And with that, I think we can put this one to rest.
Mm-hmm.
Look forward to the game this weekend. We'll be back for a post-game show, either victory scotch or pour out your sorrows with some bourbon. We'll see. But hopefully we're talking about a big win against LSU and then looking forward to the next round of the playoff rankings and seeing where we end up. So for Meltdown Ags, it's been fun. We'll see you guys next time.